Welcome to our By the Book YouTube channel. I'm delighted to have Amanda Cassidy here today, join me for the interview. So Amanda is just about to release her first novel, Breaking, which is out on 6th of October. So first off, congratulations on that. And you might just introduce yourself to anyone who's watching.
Thanks, and thanks so much for having me on. It's actually my first interview I've done for this book, so it's great. So I'm Amanda Cassidy. I'm a journalist, a freelance journalist, and I'm a mum of three. And I've just written my first book, Breaking, which is a psychological thriller about a mum who loses her child on a beach while she's on holidays. And that's coming out, as you said, on October the 6th. And I guess, yeah, I'm just trying to juggle writing and parenting and all the rest at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so can I ask you, Amanda, I might just start in terms of the inspiration behind the book, because I drew similarities from another story. You might just let anyone know who's watching where you might have drawn that inspiration from.
Well, I've always been really interested in the relationship between parents and children and the idea that motherhood can shape a person. I really like playing with those judgments and expectations that there are to be the perfect mother, and that illusion of this kind of happy, clappy, cake baking person. And that's all it is. It's a stereotype. So I think sometimes when I sat down to write the book, I wanted to take that and I wanted to kind of drop those maternal anxieties into a 5-star beach resort and see what would happen. The book itself, it's, as I said, it's about a mum who loses her child on a beach. Miriam Fitzpatrick is drinking in a bar at the time, and her 8-year-old daughter is playing on the beach. So immediately the media turns on her, and they start blaming her for leaving her unsupervised, as you can imagine. But then when she's caught out in a lie, things turn a little bit more sinister. And the detective that's charged with finding the child, he is the only one really asking the questions that how did this child vanish on the beach that day while everybody else is preoccupied with the sins of the mother. So I guess Miriam herself, the main character, she's the daughter of what you might call a not so great mother herself. So I really wanted to see that trickle down the generations and ask the questions that are you, if you've never learned to mother properly, is there a risk that you'll never become that mother? And is there any harm in that? And in Miriam's case, she's asking, well, we're asking the question of her, is she bad because she left her child on a beach unsupervised and went drinking? Is she bad because she of the superstitions she grew up with, because there's a lot of Irish superstitions that are weaved throughout the book, or is she just bad? So yeah, I guess I wanted to write it in the first person as well, because I wanted the reader to be in Miriam's head as she raced up and down this beach searching for her daughter, but also hating herself because she feels this guilt that maybe she's not the best mother in the world, and that somehow she feels like this is the outcome she might have deserved. So the inspiration came to go in a roundabout way is I was sitting on the beach during the pandemic, and we spent some time in Spain where my husband was working the second kind of half of the pandemic. And I was sitting on the beach watching my kids playing, and I had this idea that I wanted to write a book, and this is the perfect time. And I was just watching them playing on the beach, and I was like sitting in a bar, having my coffee. And I was imagining, God, if something happened to them on my watch, like I would be instantly blamed. And would a dad be blamed as much? And what if I'd been having a drink? What if I was doing the most irresponsible, arguably the most irresponsible thing that you could do? And sometimes that overwhelm when you're a mother that you have to get it right, and you have to, and that's a lot of pressure. So I guess that's where the seed of the book came. And I had my son's homeschool maths copy because we were like homeschooling. And I just took the back of his book and I wrote what's now the first chapter of Breaking, which back then was called Where Lost Things Go. The name got changed along the way by the publisher. But so that was the seed of it really. And I started off there. So that was the inspiration really.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, so had a book been in your head up until that point? Or did the book come because of that seed?
So I write for a living anyway. So as a journalist, but often it's features, it's news features, or it's human interest stories. So writing is my job. So I was used to that, but I always kind of like a lot of writers, I always thought, God, do I have a book in me? Do I have fiction in me? And I was really afraid to explore that in case I didn't. And I always had this like, oh, someday I'll write a book, you know, that kind of is on a shelf somewhere. But the pandemic was the first time that I got to challenge myself with that. And I had a conversation with an author, Andrea Mara, who's a good friend of mine, who I know you've had on the program. And I was speaking to her about it because our sons are in school together. And I was always like, oh, Andrea, you're so amazing. You've written a book. How do you do it? And what do you do? And how do you even start? And she gave me the best advice that I think everybody could hold on to, which is, she said, just write a bad book. And she was right. It was like giving yourself permission just to stop kind of like, oh, flexing your hands and, oh, where's my inspiration? It was just a matter of, I'll just write it and then I can always just go back and change it. And so I had that in the back of my head. And then very serendipitously, I met my mentor, which is he's a best-selling Irish author called Glenn Mead, but he's very big in America and not so much, say, in Ireland. And he, it was very strange the way it met. My husband was in Dunn's. He manages apartments. He was buying a load of bed sheets, and he was in the car park of Dunn's in Coroners Court, like putting them into the boot of his car. Like, it looked very strange. And this guy beside him in the car was just looking at it, and he was like, sorry, do you mind me asking what you're doing? And my husband was like, oh, I manage apartments, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, oh, actually, I have some apartments. I'm looking for someone to manage them. Would you be interested? And so they became friends. So this was Glenn Mead, the author. So my husband has said to me, oh, I'm now working with a guy, and he's a best-selling author. So I was looking him up, and I always had on my radar, you know, I want to write this book, but I don't really know where to start. And Andrea had said, just write a bad book. And it was just before the pandemic summer, the first one. And then Carl said, my husband said, do you want me to put you in touch with Glenn? And I was like, yeah, what will I say? I didn't even know what I'm going to write. And he was like, well, sure, there's no harm in anyway. So I got on to Glenn, and he was like, okay, so you want to write a book? And I'd send him a sample of my work, and he goes, well, you can write. When I was like, okay. So what happens next? And he said, I'm going to give you a list of books, and I want you to read them, and take 6 months to familiarize yourself with them. And I'm just such a hurricane. Like, in general, I'm just so impatient. So I was just like, oh, 6 months, like that's forever. But I knew that if you kind of have to eat an elephant one bit at a time. So I just bought the books and started slowly reading them. And it was very interesting, actually, because they were like screenplay based, which I thought was unusual. And then they were plot based. I don't have the names offhand, but I can get them for you if anybody's interested. So I read those books for that first summer, and we were having a very difficult summer in that someone very close in our family was going through an illness. So that was kind of a good distraction in a way. And sadly, they died during the pandemic. And then we went to Spain, and that's when I started using what I'd learned in the books and also what Andrea had said. But also there was a kernel within me that I needed to create, I suppose, as a self-expression. And I think that's what it always comes down to. And everything was so quiet and down, and there was no school run, and there was a lot of time to think and watch my kids playing on the beach. And it all came together, really. And then Glenn had said, you know, send me every few chapters and we'll see how you get on. So 1st of January, just after that Christmas, we were in Spain, and 1st of January, I sat down very predictably, and I said to myself, if I write 1,000 words a day for like 80 days, I'll have a book. And most of my articles are about 1,000 words anyway. So I figured it's an article a day, and that's totally doable. And so that's exactly what I did. I just sat down and wrote 1,000 words a day. And before I knew it, it was an escape. I couldn't control the world around me. So I just created my own world.
Oh, great story, Amanda. Love hearing different stories, and especially that. And I think you've touched on a really nice piece of advice for anyone watching, which is around getting the mentor. So I hadn't actually heard that before. And I love, in a way, how it accidentally, but meant to be as well, came into your life in that way. And that's really interesting that he kind of almost told you to take a step back, read those books. You know, and I suppose you were learning, you know, what did you learn from that process, I guess, would be the first question.
I think it's really easy to be daunted by the process when you sit down. I was literally thinking, well, what genre am I going to write? And is it in the present tense? Is it the past tense? And I just did not know where to start. So once I had the ideas of the bones of the story, and I knew, because I did read a lot of very slow turn psychological thrillers. I knew that that was the way my mind worked in that I enjoyed that darkness that comes with family dynamics. So once I'd kind of established that, which again took an awful lot of time to just think, you need to just sit and think. Then it was a case of sending over Glenn some ideas and him saying, okay, this isn't pacey enough because it should be in the present tense. So I found that really interesting. So I just go back and change that and come and he'd be like, cut it down. You need to keep that pace. You need to keep that. And he was so, he held me accountable as well, which was good. So I'd go and I'd have read over a million times and changed it before. I met him maybe only 3 times throughout the time I was writing the book. But each time his advice was very, very good. And he would give me ideas about structure and not jumping to the forward and to the past too much as well. So, but yeah, it was also a case of just sitting down with him and him saying, how much have you written now? And me going, saying, oh, I've so many X thousand words. And so I was really trying to like impress him. And then at the end of the process, it was interesting. At the end of it, he was like, okay, you've got the bones of a good book here, in my opinion. And I was like, okay, Glenn, brilliant. Now let's go. Like, you're this big hotshot author over in America. So what's next? And I didn't want to cut corners, but I kind of felt like he was able to just, lift me and put me into this place where I was good, which is just so naive, but also like understandable, really. So his advice was to get my list of agents together, which I did. And he had suggested to go and get US agents, which I thought was really interesting. He had said that the market in Ireland could be considered quite small sometimes, and that why wouldn't I go towards the UK market and the American market, and it would naturally filter back towards the Irish market. So I had never considered that, and I thought that was quite interesting. So I started compiling my list of American agents. And then I was speaking to Andrea again, who's like my little guardian angel, and she really has been somebody that has just been at the end of the phone for advice, and just such selfless advice as well. And that's why I hope if I'm successful in my future, that I can pass on anything I might know or anything that might help. But she suggested, well, also try UK and Irish agents, because why not? So that's when, between the both, we compiled this list, and that's when I started sending it off. But there is no shortcuts. There can't be any shortcuts in this process. And publishing is a very slow, well, I won't say slow, unhurried process. And for me, who came from live TV initially in my background, and then radio, where sometimes you'd be writing a story 30 seconds before you went on air, I found that an adjustment to kind of, be able to temper myself to go at the same pace as the publishing industry does. And so you send out your story in batches to various different agents, and you don't send it all at once. I'm sure other people have said similar. Well, I don't know that much about it, but from my experience, I didn't send it all at once, because then you kind of have all your eggs in one basket. So you send them out in little batches of maybe 5 or 6, and then you sit back and you just wait. And it's the most excruciating thing ever. You're just sitting and waiting, and life is happening, and you're just like, like that big thing that I've just done, the thing that might change everything, like what's going on with it? And then one day you just get an email and your life changes. And that's the beauty of this as well, because it's a slog, and it's lonely, and it's very long, but there are glimmers of just delight in it that I don't think anybody would do unless it existed.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And when did that email come through, and what were then, I suppose, the steps to getting it published?
So I wrote the book, as I said, on the 1st of January, and I'd finished it by the middle of March, first draft. That's good. And then rewriting. And then I'd sent out my list of agents, and I was really, really fortunate when it came to agents being interested in the book. And I really acknowledge that that's not everybody's path, and that it can be very hard in different places. And I imagine my really hard spot is in another area of this whole process, maybe when the book gets published. But my process to getting an agent was just an absolute joy, in that I got a few responses, and they seemed interested in America and in the UK. And then they ask for a full manuscript, and then you get so excited, you want to throw up. And then if they like it, then they ask you, would you like to have a call? And unless you're a complete freak, you kind of know that they're not going to have a call with you unless they're interested in representing you. So I had calls with some US agents and then some UK agents. And I was so excited. And I was saying to my husband, oh my God, like you're having Zooms with people in New York and you're just like, oh my God, your mind's nearly blown. And it was that summer. So it was around August of that summer of 2021. Yeah, it had just turned into 2021. So it was that summer where everything was still like kind of getting back to normal, but not really. It was a really hot summer and I was in my writing shed, which is literally a shed. And I just kept like running in and out and being like, oh my God, like they want to represent me. And just like, that was definitely the high of this process. It's just that absolute excitement that I'll probably never have again in any shape or form. And just that validation that it was all worth it. So anyway, and then I was sitting in my shed one day and there was one agent that I just wanted above everybody else. And that was Madeleine Milburn in the UK. And it was just everything about her process that just really, I really wanted to be represented by her. And she also represented one of the books that I've been reading at the moment, which was Ashley O'Dren's The Push, I was just loved so much, that kind of dark mummy noir. So I was sitting in the shed one day and I got this email from Rachel, who works in her office, who was one of the literary agents. And she said, and I never forget just reading that email, and it just said, we've just read your manuscript and shared it amongst the team, and we all agreed that it's the most heartfelt description of loss that anyone's ever read. And I was just like, oh my God, I was just sitting in the office outside just going, oh my God. And then she said, Madeleine's on holidays at the moment, but we're going to send it to her because we think she'll absolutely love it. So kind of send us the manuscript and watch this space. And I was like, oh my God, I was nearly getting sick. And I remember just like bending double with emotion, like it's not like anything else, but just taking and making myself take a moment to just realize the magnitude of like what it had taken me to get to there. Because like you might sound easy, like I've said, you just write 1,000 words a day and you've got a book, but the reality is that it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to string those words together. It's hard to think about the entirety of the plot. It's tiring. It's exhausting. It's emotional. It's all of those things. And to suddenly get an email like that, it's like, oh my God. And then about another week later, I got an email from Madeleine saying she'd like to set up a call. And that's when I just was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. So then like you're so on a high and you got your call and you're just like, I'm going to be the next big thing. It's amazing. But you also have to like always temper it with the fact that, life doesn't go like that, and nor should it really, because you won't appreciate it if it all comes too easy, I suppose. So anyway, then we had to go over and back with the edits, and that's really hard because your agent's going to give you advice on what needs to change before they put it out to publishers, which is called the submission process. So anyway, the notes then that came back, and you're just like, oh my God, I thought you loved it. You take it so sensitively as well. And then you're like changing it. You're like, God, why are they even representing me if they think it's this bad? But it's just such brilliant advice as well. And they really take the book and just make it dance a bit more. So I made all the changes, and I remember it was just a long process. You're literally at my kitchen table with my headphones on. My life is just going on around me. I have 3 children, so they're 7, 10. So they were like 6, 9 and 10 at the time. So like that's kind of busy. And again, this is after the pandemic, so life was a bit more normal then. And you're just like 8, 9 hours at the kitchen table, trying to make all these edits and knowing that you might have got a great agent, but there's no guarantee you're going to get it published at all. And your book can die on submission. That's the expression, die on submission. Whereas you send it out to all the publishers, and then nobody might buy it. Nobody. And then that's that. You just literally put the book in your drawer, and that's the end of that whole year-long process. But I was lucky enough that Canelo, my publisher, did want to buy it, and so we had a 2-book deal, which is probably the standard, I think. I don't know, some people might want a 3-book deal or a 5-book deal, but I like 2 because you're not in the process for long enough that you can't escape it either. So and that's when, so I got my agent in the August of that year, and then I got my publisher in October, and now it's nearly a full year later. So it is, and that's considered fast in publishing.
Yeah.
Very long-winded answer, sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, that does sound fast. But yeah, I mean, that sounds like a lot of work went into actual manuscripts on your side.
Yeah. I used to go up to like there's a gym nearby and it has a cafe in it. And like, I knew if I was working at the table at home, like you will get the taps on the shoulder and the, can you just make me this? Can you? And my husband's very good and very supportive, but he's working too. So after a while, when the kids were back then in school, I was going up to the gym and just, I didn't even go and work out. I would just go up to the gym, put on my headphones and just write and write and write. And just because you want people around you and you can eat at the cafe. And I remember a friend of mine came up and she'd been in and out to her classes. And I remember her coming over and saying to me later, she goes, geez, you know, when people say, God, you look wrecked, and you're always like, don't ever say that to someone, that's awful. She was like, I need to tell you that you look wrecked. And I did. I was just so tired because you were just so, you were so close. You were just so close. And also you're very aware that the words, suddenly you have an awareness that the words you're writing, people are going to read and they're going to critique. And so what went from a personal goal of mine, which was, God, I wonder, can I write a book? Oh, wow, I can. I think I can. And then to, oh, someone wants this and this is now a different beast entirely. I think that process was really probably, and if we speak about some challenges that people like, that was a huge challenge for me psychologically to change the exposure to going from I'm indulging these like thoughts and this world that I've created to somebody is going to read that and they're going to have an opinion on it. And, you know, as somebody who's quite private and has a fear of exposure, I think that's really difficult. And that's what faces me in the next couple of weeks as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you don't sign up for it for that element. Well, I didn't anyway. So it'd be interesting to see how that changes. But yeah, a lot of work goes into a lot of your heart and soul goes into it. And so it should, you know, mm-hmm. it's an act of creation, isn't it? And like I said earlier, it's self-expression. So, but yeah, I don't think you can prepare yourself for the judgment that will inevitably come your way, except to just keep saying, oh, that's none of my business, and maybe not read any other reviews. But people have been really kind and really lovely so far about it. So I'm just going to focus on those positive things and also just try and realize that, that this is just, it is what it is.
So when you have the final then script ready to go and there's, you know, maybe a year before it hits the shelves, what kind of things then have you been doing? Do you get some time off during that year or do you go into promotion mode?
No, I didn't take any time off because and it's not like it's finished and then you wait a year. Like up until maybe 2 weeks ago, I'm still working on elements of it, on maybe like what's on the front cover, or we put another author quote on. So it's a constant in motion thing until it comes out. And I should be getting the physical copies of my book tomorrow or the next day, which is just like, that's going to be for me one of the biggest moments, just holding the actual book. So what have I been doing? The edits are structural edits initially, which are, you know, after you have that through your agent and you send and you get your publisher, they want to also make some changes and change things like the name, which was changed from Where Lost Things Go to Breaking, which I really liked. And then you start talking about the book cover and the shape of it and the structure of it. And then you send that back and then they come back with some more notes and then you work on that for like 10 days of 8-hour days. And then it sends back and then they come back with line edits, which are literally line by line. Would this really happen? Might as well say, are you a freak? Would this really happen? Or is there, you know, there's all this like really just making sure that this makes sense to the reader. And then you send that back and you feel miserable for a while that it's terrible. And then they send it back and they say nice things. And then you do the copy edit, which is literally like checking spellings, doing all those little grammatical things. It's so detailed. And so that's what we've been working on over back. And in between, you feel this pressure to write the second book because I wanted to write book 2 unselfconsciously. So I didn't want anyone's opinion to reflect how I write, because I think that's the joy. It was the joy of writing the first book. And maybe that's why people liked it, because you just write with the freedom that I'm aware that I mightn't have once Breaking goes out into the world. So I quickly wrote book 2, and it so happened that it was January 1st again. and I was in Spain. And so that was obviously a pattern. So I started writing book 2 on January the 1st, 2022. Is that right? Yeah, 2022. And again, I was there tip tapping away, and I only write for 2 hours a day because we have like the kids and life and my other work and everything. So, but those 2 hours were just my absolute joy, where I would just hide away and just write. So then, yeah, quickly wrote book 2, and again, finished it kind of mid thing. And it comes quickly for me because I love to write, and it flows for me. And like part of it is the spaces between the words that you can, the things you don't say, that really appeals to me as well. So I love crafting it in that way. And I don't make any apologies for not plotting, or for, for just being very like arty about it. People can think, oh, you're not an artist, you're a writer. But actually, I think it's really important that you feed that creativity and take a moment to kind of respect that creativity, because it is a beautiful thing, and it's something that's I really love. That's part of me, that I'm able to do that. But also you need to plot, and you need to have certain elements of structure. So it's again, this book 2 is about family dynamics, and it's about the impact of a crime on a family. And whereas Breaking is about a missing child on a beach, this book is about a house fire, and it was actually inspired by a house fire we had ourselves here in my house when my daughter was a newborn. And we came home one day, and the stove had gone on fire, and the whole house is 8-foot flames coming from the roof. And it was just it was one of the moments where you think, oh, if my newborn was in this house, what would have happened? And so the story kind of takes hold from there. It's not all bleak though, so there's kind of a love element to it too. So I did that, and now that so in the process, simultaneously, that book is now gone for edits, and it's been over and back for edits. So I'm waiting for that, and so now I'm book 3. Yeah, book 3 is unfolding.
No way.
Yeah, it kind of has to.
It's a year for you.
Really busy. It's really busy, but when you don't, you don't feel like
I can tell you love it though.
I do.
I can feel your passion, which is great.
Yeah, I think it's important. And then when you're not writing, you feel guilty for not reading, and then you're reading, you should be writing. So, and then you actually have to parent in between all that.
Yeah. And do you still have your mentor involved, or so he's still involved, which is brilliant.
So he spends a lot of time in America. He lives in Florida, but he's been amazing in terms of just now kind of bracing me for what's ahead. And he'll hopefully be at the launch next week, which is really exciting.
Brilliant. And where is that happening?
That's in Hodges Vegas.
Oh, lovely. Okay. I look forward to seeing pictures. So we might then just touch on a question. You touched on some of it, but I'm interested. So over that period, which is actually being 2 books now, you touched on some of the highs, which is where obviously that lovely email from your agent, I'm sure the publisher, when you got that as well. And maybe what were some of the lows that you would have faced, or some of the challenges that anyone watching, if they're going through similar, any advice around that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I say the great things, they're just such standout moments, but the reality is that you're, and not to be bleak about it, but you have to be very self-motivated. You have to get up and you have to sit, and you have to kind of think, and it can be lonely. So that's, and I know Andrea spoke about that as well, but those can be difficult. And then I think that what I touched on earlier about the fear of exposure, I think that's a low, in that even through social media, you do have to project, you do have to promote your book, because we're part of a whole new era where that's people expect you to have, they want to know about the author, and that's fair enough, but you do feel so kind of pressure to curate that as well. And when you're a private person, and most writers are probably quite introverted, and they're kind of happier just sitting and writing, and so they have to come out of that shell and be somebody who you're not naturally. I think that's definitely been a challenge for me. And then there's this quiet time where you're not getting any emails, and you don't know if they like it or not, and you don't know if you even like it yourself or not. And those moments of self-doubt are really strong. No matter what your process is, no matter how long, if it took 5 years to write a book or 5 weeks, no matter if you have an agent or no agent, or if you're self-published, or if you're writing romance or whatever you're writing, I think those moments of self-doubt are the common factor in it. And I guess you just that's when you do have to just try and believe in yourself and try and just find that passion for it and ask yourself, do you still have passion for it, and get the story down as well. What other moments have I found challenging? Yeah, I mean, I've never been I don't think I'm an insecure person. I think I'm I'm quite self-contained, and I think I'm quite a secure person. But some of the times when, when the emails went quiet, like with your agent or with your publisher, you literally instantly are like, oh my God, they hit it. Like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? This is so embarrassing. Can you recall that email? Like, you were just, and I've said the wrong thing, and especially because my agent and my publisher are both UK based, and they're very, they're quite, I'm going to say the right word now. They're quite polite, like you kind of nearly have to read in between the lines of the politeness to get what they actually mean when they're saying things. And I find that quite direct. So I find that difficult. So it's kind of reading between the lines going, they said that they love it, but like, what do they actually mean? So trying to decipher this. And so, yeah, those moments of self-doubt were really, really strong, and stronger than I ever thought, and so I think you're constantly trying to temper that with your own internal voice that's already saying, you're not really good enough for this, and who's going to read this anyway? And so you're constantly trying to like just do the math. And my sister's great for this. She's always like, you've written a book, that's amazing. Like, you've got to just like own that and just be proud of it. And you have this other voice going, yeah, but what if no one likes it? And so, yeah, that's a battle. And that's a battle that I never expected to have, in my 40s. When I felt like my kids were getting older, my life was really more established in terms of my work, my career. And suddenly out of left field, I'm doing something that I didn't expect to be doing, and kind of beating yourself up along the way. So that's definitely been a journey this year, for sure.
And out of interest, so because you're obviously a journalist as well, so would you have the same self-doubt as a journalist?
No, but I think that comes with with experience of doing it. I think when I first wrote articles that might have been expressed an opinion, I was very careful with what I wrote, even about my family. And I don't write very personally in general, but if I did have to reference something in terms of a parenting article, I was really, really careful about putting myself out there. But when you do it for long enough, and I've been writing full time now for about 10 years, I think you get a kind of a bravery, and you get a sense of, well, no one's died here, so, but I think that's a slow comfort zone. And I imagine that's why it's similar with writing, that after a few books out, you do just get used to it. I hope.
Well, it's amazing that you're on book 3. So, and as you said, you got the second book done and dusted before any opinions come along, which I'm sure, by the way, are going to be absolutely fabulous and positive from what I've seen so far about your book. So then I suppose we'll just touch on another question. And I know we've covered some parts, but are there any other pieces of advice then for anyone who's starting out that you might have, who's either on book 1 or draft? What would be your key piece of advice from your experience?
I would say be really consistent with your writing, because the more you write, the more you get practiced. And it would have been so easy to just put it away and say, I'll look at that next week when I have more time because of life is happening around you. But I would say to just stick with the project at hand, and just until it's finished, and don't be afraid to do it quickly. Like, I remember I was listening to an interview with Will Dean, who's written some fabulous books, and he lives in the Scandinavian forest. So he has all the time in the world by the sounds of things, because he's off grid. But what he did say was that sometimes he writes as if it's like a frenzied dream. He just puts himself into the state, and he literally just bangs out the words in like 2 months or a few weeks. But I can see that isn't for everyone, but I can see the benefits to just getting it out in any form. And then once you have something that you have in front of you, then you can shape it, and then you can take a long time to shape it, but just have something there. So my advice would be to do it, and try and do it as quickly as possible within your own life. And then, I think it's really important to just have that belief in yourself that you can do it, because nobody else is going to be, saying that voice to you. So I think it's really important to just focus on it yourself and just say, yeah, I can do this. And then just write a bad book and hopefully it won't be a bad book by the end of it.
Yeah, excellent. No, I love all that advice. And I think overall you've given amazing bits through your interview. So I thank you for that and for sharing all that. How do you then fit in social media? I mean, you touched on it and you said it's now the era of social media for authors, and the readers want to know a bit about the author themselves. So how have you managed to fit that part in? Or is that a work in progress?
I think it's a necessary thing and it's part of the job, which is fine. And I don't resent doing it because sometimes I quite enjoy being creative on social media, and I like create. I suppose it's a creative thing. I like creating the little videos, the little music and the reels and stuff. And I like that. But what I don't like is feeling exposed or like I've overshared, because that makes me feel a little bit sick. And that's okay, because we're at the very start of this process. In terms of putting myself out there. So I think it's okay to feel like that. I think it's completely natural. So I think as long as I can create, I can still have fun with it and feel like I'm enjoying it, and not only sharing things about your book, because I know some people, they advised just, authors are only following you because you're an author, and so just put booky things up. But actually, I think these days people are more interested in the personality behind the author, and that maybe they want to see, what you cook and how you live. But I'm careful that I don't show my children's faces, and that's just a decision I've made. But I'm not one to like talk to the camera, so there's certain elements that you can show or not show as much as you're comfortable with. But I think as long as it's, I see it as a creative medium. And I think as long as I do that, I actually quite enjoy doing the Instagram stuff. And Twitter, yeah, I think Twitter is actually, I get my most information from Twitter in terms of other authors, and it's a really supportive community on Twitter as well. And TikTok, I have a TikTok account, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Me and Andrea are always like, what's going on TikTok? We don't know how to do this. And also just earlier when I was giving advice, I forgot to mention the benefit of a mentor.
Oh yeah, of course.
That was really, really helpful to me, just to have that accountability and just to have somebody who knows what they're doing, steering you. So I think that would be really important too.
No, absolutely. So apart from holding your book hopefully tomorrow or the next day, is there anything else what are you most looking forward to in the next couple of weeks?
I just want to take my book, like the real version of the book, and I just want to put it on my shelf, and I just want to sit down and I just want to look at it, because that was always my dream. I want to see my book on a shelf. And God, I'm going to get like emotional about this, but I think that's just the dream I've had for so long. And I think that's really important, to have that dream and to recognize the moment that you have that dream, and the moment, and appreciate that moment, because so many things pass you by and then you look back and you go, oh, that happened. That thing I was always hoping for, it happened already. So I think I'm really going to cherish that moment. Then obviously I'm writing book 3, which is quite different to anything I've written before. And it'll be one that's going out for a new submission to new publishers, as well as my current publishers, if they want it. And that's a little bit different to anything I've written before. So I feel like it's quite special. But that's, again, it's like nearly like book 1 going out again. So that comes with its own set of challenges and nerves that it's going to be good enough. And then they'll be promoting the books. I'm going to London to do that, and that'll be exciting as well. And then, yeah, the kids are back in school. So it's really, really busy now in the run up to Christmas. And I'm looking forward to just a bit of a rest, just a mental rest from it, because it has been, it's been relentless, but in a good way, but still relentless since I sat down that day in January 1st and decided to write my first 1,000 words. So it's been an amazing hurricane twisty journey, but it'll culminate in tomorrow when I hold up my book.
Yeah, wow, congratulations. Well, look, Amanda, I wish you all the best with it. It's been so lovely to talk to you. Conversation's actually flown. Yeah, no, you've shared so much with us. It's been just, lovely to meet you in person. How do people follow you if they want to follow you online?
I'd love having more followers. On Instagram, it's Amanda Cassidy Writes. And on Twitter, it's Amanda Cassidy with 3 S's, Cassidy. Yeah, and that's where you find me.
3 S's, brilliant. And you have a website as well, which is lovely, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's Amanda Cassidy Author. .com. But yeah, I'm probably more active on social media.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a little bit about you on that, I think.
Yeah, get some my blurb on that. And so the book will be out next week, 6th of October, and it should be, you can get it online too.
Yeah, well, look, congratulations and all the best for book 2 and 3 as well. I'm sure there's an amazing career ahead of you, and I look forward to watching.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, so thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Rachel. It was lovely to talk to you. And if anyone wants to reach out and get some advice, I'm always happy to help as much as I can.
Thanks so much, Amanda.